Yeah,
with
so far,
oh
so
great.
there. Here we go. Cool.
All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. I'm here with Seth and Ganga from Imuna, and we're going to be talking about their experience through the lens of the EarthWise Entrepreneur, which we're launching here at RegenEarth Studio. And the EarthWise Entrepreneur is a framework for entrepreneurship that creates a better earth, better communities, and also works for you individually because we decided and realized that there doesn't have to be a trade-off between supporting yourself through your business, supporting your finances through your business, supporting your community through your business, and supporting your local ecosystem. So we're here to talk through their experience and explore how these pillars apply and hopefully you get some ideas on how you can start integrating these four pillars in the way that you're building your business. And I'm also going to share the upcoming events that we have that you can join us at. So welcome everybody, and Seth and Ganga, thanks so much for joining.
Of
Yeah, we're
course.
so happy to be here with you.
So great to have you. Um, so I'm just going to give you an outline of the four pillars, and then I would love to hear which pillar resonates most with you and how that has applied to your experience at Amuna.
Beautiful.
So the first is inner coherence. So this is really the space of making sure, do my personal values and passions and sources of energy in life that vitalize me, are they integrated into the offerings that I'm sharing with my business? Are they integrated in the way that I'm operating? Is it integrated in the way that I'm launching? So this is really of like, do I personally feel good showing up as my role in this business as a founder? Does it really come from your authentic energy? And the reason that this is so important to us to highlight, because it might seem obvious to some people, but it's important to highlight because when people think entrepreneur or founder, there's a kind of collective story around what that means and what you have to build to be considered as an entrepreneur. And so inner coherence is our check of saying, hey, is this a story that you inherited, or is this a story that resonates with your essence as a unique being? So that's the first pillar, inner coherence. And then, well, technically, that's the second. The first pillar is business excellence. So it's really right, you can't continue to build a legacy and regenerate the earth and yourself if you are not financially supported by your business. If it's not financially supported, and it's not supporting you as the founder, it creates a lot of energy gaps and difficulties that makes everything else really difficult. So the pillar of business excellence really describes the process of, are you financially solvent as a business? Are you paying yourself enough as a business owner and as a founder? And are the operations tight? And I don't know if efficient is the right word. Effective might be a better word.
I
Uh,
think efficient is a great word, and I think
okay.
nature is extraordinarily efficient. So
Yeah.
I definitely vote for efficiency for sure.
Cool. So these are really, people think of like conventional business excellence. Like in a lot of ways, it's really helpful. It's really useful. And if you want to regenerate a forest ecosystem, you need to make sure your administration side and your interface, I think of it as the interface to the economy and the interface to this money system. You want to make sure that interface isn't draining you of energy and it's well organized and it's setting you up for the deeper layers of thinking and being that support all of the other things. Inner coherence being the first one. And the third pillar, so business excellence, we see at RegenEarth Studio as like kind of the foundation in a way as a founder and entrepreneur. If you're not, offering something that people want and getting the right compensation in return, everything else becomes very difficult and extra complex, and almost impossible because there's a in our kind of post-capitalist world right now, financial stability is deeply intertwined with the state of the nervous system. And how do you reach inner coherence if you're always saying, "Oh, where's my next rent payment going to come from?" It's just really hard. Um, so there's business excellence as the foundation, then there's inner coherence, making sure that the operations and the purpose and the offerings are aligned with who I really am as a being. And then there's earth sourced leadership. And um, this one is really kind of still an exploration for me. All of them are. And this is a framework for exploration, not like a you should 100% do this, but it's like, hey, let's explore through these pillars. And so Earth Source leadership is how the way I think about it is how am I taking lead from the earth? How am I understanding my business as I understand the growth of trees? Or how do I understand my offerings as fruits? How do I base the way and the rhythms and the way that I organize my team or lead in the workings of ecosystems? So it's really this sourcing from the earth in how I show up and infusing that energy into the operations, into the meetings, into how we talk about things, how we market. So that's Earth Source leadership. And the what that enables, what all of those enable is living systems thinking, which helps one really have a systemic effect, right? And this is the difference between having a business that the community loves and it doesn't really like no one else knows about it and no one else has been affected by it, but it's really beloved in the community. And that's beautiful. And, those are needed. And those types of businesses have the potential through living systems thinking to really be like an acupuncture point that brings vitality to their whole bioregion or their whole industry. And living systems thinking gives us the toolkit to step into that kind of scary realm of saying like how do I change an entire industry to be more aligned with life? How do I change this entire city or state or bioregion in a tangible way that has ripple effects far beyond just the activities of my business? So those are like the four pillars of EarthWise entrepreneurship. We have business excellence, inner coherence, earth source leadership, and living systems thinking. And I'm curious, in your experience with Amuna, which one feels maybe closest to home or the starting point that you'd like to kick off this exploration today?
Yeah, I would say that the starting point for me is always the interconnectedness. That's always like the where it's first coming from, and everything else follows. But noticed Seth was taking notes, and I'm curious, Seth, if you want to kick us off with anything.
I was just going to express that just all four pillars are totally woven into how we set up Amuna, how we operate Amuna, and truly I have talking points for all four of them. But yeah, Ganga, I think that's a great place to start where you just did.
Yeah, beautiful. And I just want to acknowledge Linda's beautiful comment in the chat. A lot of corporate business practices, the grind, absolutely do not support us as whole people. On the contrary, current corporate practices are highly draining and absolutely. And I think that, of course, all of these pillars are so interconnected with one another. But I want to start with interconnectedness because um, Seth and I met when I'd recently graduated from college. And when people would ask my mom, like, what I was doing, she would say that she's like in grad school without having to pay for it. I was so incredibly deep in the study of living systems and like just developing myself in a very deep living systems oriented way that has completely changed my life, opened up so many amazing opportunities and connections and everything and for me. And so um, Seth and I met when I was like still like I feel like a baby in that space and in that world. And we began, our relationship continuously the way that it is now, constantly weaving how I understand the world with his incredible expertise, and both of us learning so much more about the interconnected systems at every single scale of reality, from one another and with one another. And,
Well,
you
your
know,
background was more in the interconnectedness of like the living world, and
mhm,
my background is more of the interconnectedness of the human body.
yeah.
Mm.
And we definitely wove those together into what we now offer. Sorry to cut you off, Ganga.
Yeah, no, no, thank you. And, and then, as like, we're both kind of obsessed with continuous education, and really interested in always making connections across different domains of study and different domains of practice, especially so that we can serve our clients better. And so, as we were both in interspiritual seminary, and Seth then became a trauma informed somatic sexologist, and just we're kind of continuously gathering all these different framings and ways of understanding the interconnectedness of every dimension inside of people's lives, with every dimension of what is, quote, outside of ourselves. But of course, when you're operating from a living systems understanding, you and a regenerative understanding, you understand that that there is no inside outside. There's different spheres of nestedness, and that we are all nested within the same whole, massive living system. And so that's the place that we started designing our business from, was actually like kind of the core question driving the development of Amuna was, how can we support the paradigm shift t- most effectively with the skills and qualifications that we have. How can we most effectively support the paradigm shift toward a regenerative living systems understanding of reality? Um, and yeah, so that was kind of the starting point of the
Yeah.
design of
And
everything
if I could just
that.
add to that, Adam, you specifically said like how does living systems change, excuse me, how does living systems thinking change industry? And at the root of everything we do is the Buckminster Fuller quote of, we're not gonna, Ganga, you could give it
Yeah,
verbatim.
the not about changing
Mm.
systems. Yeah, yeah. So Buckminster Fuller famously said that you never change anything by tearing down the old structures. You have to create the new systems that make the old structures obsolete. And
And
so, yeah,
because
yeah. Go ahead.
so many of the fields that we work in as an industry work in isolation, and we can say our work covers the physical body, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and sexological, whereas those industries all upon themselves are incredibly watered down and saturated with a lack of integrity and ethics.
Mm.
Whereas we were like, okay, well, we need to develop a completely new model that simply makes those old ones obsolete. And
Yeah,
that's definitely been a core drive of ours.
Mm. And in that process of, okay, we're looking to, so basically the whole that I'm hearing you kind of place yourself, or maybe the greater whole, is the like fitness industry combined with others. It's like this overlap of a personal growth industry. Is that
Yeah,
accurate, or what greater
yeah.
whole do you see yourself best?
We could list off a dozen industries pretty easily, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest with you. There's the fitness, the personal training world, the CrossFit, the yoga, the meditation, the spiritual bypass,
Mm.
toxic masculinity, sacred bros. Ganga, you could continue, but just the whole
that's been very much on our mind this morning.
yeah, the whole just like watered down new age industry. And yeah, Ganga, you could elaborate.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was teaching last week on regenerative development to the design science studio, and one of the questions was about, we were talking about nestedness, and one of the questions was about, like, how, if you're thinking about, so this is like me kind of applying this in real time. If you're thinking about nested holes, like, it's turtles all the way down, like, there's infinite dimensions and layers of nestedness that you can look at. And I would say, like, the larger hole that we're nested within is like the cosmos, and we receive a lot of our guidance and our perspective on the potential of what we're creating from there. But I know that it was very impactful for me when I was in my in my developmental process with the Regenesis Institute, which Adam and I are both graduates of, that our teacher, Pamela Mang, clarified that when you are working at a level of looking for the development of a system, you need to look at at like the next two spheres of proximal wholes, to transform them. So to your question, Adam, I would say that the next proximal whole, I guess, could most effectively be categorized as personal development. And I and that like people go toward personal development in many different ways under wearing different kind of masks, including, Seth, in his long-term career, with working, with just like really elite athletes and, billionaires and like all of these amazing people on primarily on the physical body for a while. People would come to him and they would share things with him in that setting that they wouldn't even share with their therapists. And then of course, if people are looking for, guidance in their sexuality, like there's a lot of deep personal development that needs to be done there. People go to into spiritual spaces for that as well. But it really does have to do with the development of the person, the personal development. But personal development in the dominant culture, the way that it's treated it's just completely, like rooted in the individualism of the larger culture that we exist within. And so it's profoundly flawed and profoundly lacking. And we joke about this often, but like we all know somebody who goes to a personal development seminar or workshop or retreat or something and comes back more of an asshole. It's not, it's a trope for a reason. And I think that, a lot of people even have, like a cringe when it comes to the idea of personal development. Some people really love it, but we categorize what we do with Amuna very consistently again and again as personal development for collective evolution. We are always oriented toward, how does this affect the whole? I'm very much influenced by Kantian ethics of like, if I take this action, maybe it will or won't have bad ramifications, but if everyone in the world took this action, would it affect the world in a better way or a worse way? And I shape my choices, our business practices, everything from that place. And I feel very deeply. I know, I believe Donna is here. She's in our year-long cohort, Begin Within, and she was reflecting to us the other day just that she's really just in this first month really beginning to see and feel the larger cultural implications of the work that we teach. And that's like the best feedback that we could possibly ever receive, because that is what we've designed it for from the very beginning.
Mm. So it's like you're seeing yourself nested in this space of personal development, and you're seeing, and the next level is what are the activating and resisting forces in this system, right? And so the activating force is development, right?
People are hungry to grow and learn about themselves and become better and suffer less and fix the problems that are causing harm in their relationships and their lives. Yeah, it's this, the activating force is the fact that people know that something is better for them and their lives. The restraining force is the toxic individualism that is what they're most often faced with. And what Seth made a post yesterday, a note, but about how like all of these men who are massively successful, like Peter Attia, who we just found out is in the Epstein files, and Tony Robbins, who was just at the White House for the Melania showing, and Deepak Chopra, who's also in the Epstein files, and like all of these figures are massively successful. And so their voices are like the most dominant. And why are they so massively successful? Because they've leveraged, I think, some of the most unhealthy practices of business as usual and marketing and, the development of a personality cult, to get their message out there. And that sucks up all the oxygen in the room and takes people often further away from their agency, from their discernment, from their ability to actually transform and develop their lives from a place of a deep internal self-knowing, which is how we design everything, for
And
within.
one of the things that's just connected to all of this is because of capitalism, most of these industry, like I always say, a good fitness magazine could be one issue,
Yeah.
like truly, but that's not going to sell subscriptions. And the reality is across the multiple dimensions of health, wellness, well-being that we work in, it's radically simple. And all you really need are the foundational principles, and then to weave in your lived experience in order to embody it, live it, make it your own. But that's not feeding the capitalistic machine that is running a million miles per hour. And we're trying to bring an alternative to those industries.
Hmm. And so one thing that is really interesting in what you were saying, Ganga, is the restricting force is individualism. And then you ended up like reminding, like, or going back to the reality that that same individualism in a collective context is also that's the reconciling force. That's the
Yeah.
evolution
That's it.
that you're looking to
Yeah.
create.
Totally. So yeah, the reconciling force is, I mean, and this is a tension that I was living with for a long time. My father was a spiritual teacher, and I had a lot of issues with what I felt was a more individualistic focus on, like, he was always teaching about love. But it was like, love is the answer. You just have to, like, have love within yourself and be love, which ironically, like, the mini course that we just launched this week is called Be the Love. And for a long time I was like, well, we need more loving systems. We need the systems that we live within to be loving. It's not just about what we do as individuals. And there was definitely that thesis antithesis tension between us for a long time. And I've written about this, but I've come to integrate and reconcile that tension with a very deep belief and passion that um, you know we can point the finger outward to the systems that we live within all day long. We can get incredibly outraged, and it's justified. It's justifiable. We can look at all of the conditions that make it impossible or feel impossible to, like, live well, for sure. And what can we do? What can any of us ever do? What each of us can do is the next thing that we can do, whatever that is. And that comes from our bodies, that comes from our minds, that comes from our integrated whole system. And we need to not be, like, following steps that are imposed from someone else outside of us, but we need to know ourselves deeply enough, know our values deeply enough, cultivate a deep enough sense of trusting relationship with the messages from our body, and from the discernment of our own mind. And from that place, we can affect uh, incredible change in our personal lives and in our relationships and in our relationship with the wider world. And we can know from a place of clarity what that next right step is, instead of just following marching orders from, whatever personality cult is popular in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, what does the development of living systems, I guess, action look like in the context of building a Muna? What does developing that capability look like in practice for you all?
So a huge part of that has been for us. I'm laughing because I think for a long time we were building a number of different pieces of the Amuna ecosystem, but kind of fragmented. We were like, okay, we're gonna create this offering, and it's really good, and it makes sense, on its own here, and then we're gonna create this thing, but it was hard, and we felt that it was all connected, but it was hard to kind of convey how it was all connected. And then last year we came out with our course, The Edge, which is an amazing process that people go through at their own pace, at the pace of their own nervous system and their own body's sense of trust, to become their own somatic sexual healer. And it just kind of started taking off really nicely. And we'd been receiving the feedback from business coaches and experts and things, that, like, we have like all these different things that could be really successful businesses on their own, really successful products on their own. And that we need to that what we really need to do is focus in on one thing, make a good enough, money, and then kind of grow and build from there. And so we were like, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this with the edge. But then something in us told us, you need to do begin within as well. Like, you need to do this year-long cohort. You need to build the relational ecosystem this coming year. And we listened to that guidance in a very deep way. And then from that guidance, as begin within has begun rolling, and with some amazing, beautiful connections already being made, and just it feels fantastic in that space. We've begun to it seems like we're in another cycle of the reconciling force of the development, of really being like, I think it's clear to us, and I think it's clear to our community how it really is an ecosystem. And no matter what point you enter into the ecosystem, if you join us in like our summer course, Sex, God, and Money, or if you start with this, $36 Be the Love writing ritual that we just created, or like any of the things that we offer, every single one of them weaves in really elegantly to the others, and complements the others really so beautifully. And I think that the nature and the focus of each one of them is really clear and explicit as well, which is very important. Yeah, go ahead.
And to kind of, well, there's so many things that you mentioned as we're talking about living systems thinking that are just like a beautiful bridge into the source leadership,
Mhm.
because every one of our entire ecosystem is designed around um cosmological rhythms, seasons, and cycles. So all of our courses are designed in a way where you go through a season of life. Begin Within is designed with the new moons. So everything we do is like incredibly intentional
Mm.
to the Earth's wisdom.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm. And one thing that you were touching on, Ganga, I felt like um one important piece of living systems thinking and action and development is that you were touching on is working on the conditions,
Mm.
right? Like ultimately and understanding like, oh, what was behind those recommendations to focus on the edge, right? It seems like what was behind it, the desire to scale financially so you can scale influentially, right? And have a greater impact on this personal development system. And the important piece that you brought in with um, sitting with that and reflecting and doing the process of critical thinking of, does this sit right with our rhythms? That was the inner coherence piece.
Mhm.
And the other piece that you touched on, and this is just how these pillars of Earthwise entrepreneurship are so interconnected, right? Like they all touch each other. The other piece that you mentioned was um, the communication aspect and the user experience aspect of having kind of that functional operational capability of people being able to enter from somewhere and then be able to discover things in other places. And what I'm kind of sensing is that where where I guess in the traditional sense, business excellence and operational efficiency was all about um, the shortest way from point A to B. I'm getting the sense that as a earthwise entrepreneur, and if you all in the audience are building a business that you want to work for earth, for the community, and for yourself, you're probably building something that looks more like an ecosystem than a factory, because
Yeah.
that's what people are kind of trained to think of business as a factory, right? Create a product, service, ship it, scale it, create a product, service, ship it, scale it. And what you're describing is much more relational. And there's the operational technical infrastructure, but there's a relational infrastructure that you mentioned connects to the planets, right? You're sourcing some of that infrastructure in terms of when you launch to where the moon is at, where are the different planets at. And I think that's it's a beautiful way of weaving all of these things together and just describing this evolution that you've been on. And I guess from that point, Seth started to touch on earth sourced leadership. How else have you been sourcing the way that you're leading, both in terms of co-stewards with each other, uh, and also uh, leading or stewarding in this larger personal wellness space? How are you sourcing that from the earth, and what does that look like for you to grow that capability?
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Seth, do you want
No, this feels like you're more of your
to?
wheelhouse.
um, Thank you. Yeah, so I think that just thinking like where to begin. There's a core philosophy and kind of theory of change that underpins our work, that we call um, ecosomatic cybernetics. That is, and the origin of the term cybernetics is from the Greek to steer. So it's about steering a system, first and foremost. And I can speak forever about like the origins of cybernetics and the different streams through which it's taken shape, and why we overwhelmingly think about cybernetics as in terms of machines, and why that's inaccurate. Um, and then so it's the process of steering the system from a place that is informed by eco, by our collective home, oikos, our collective home, this living world that we all belong to, and soma, and our own bodies. So it can ecosomatic cybernetics can be applied to our to how we steer and guide our, and by our I mean like the collective, any one of us, a marriage, a family, a business, and our whole, like, I think that at scale, if we were all able to operate, this is my vision, is that um you know uh Erica Chenoweth, the sociologist, talks about how like we need 3.5% of population to effectively combat authoritarianism and to make significant social change. And so if I'm imagining like 3.5% of the population of the planet, of a country, of a state, of a city, at any whatever scale, operating from a place of ecosomatic cybernetics, where you are deeply in touch with the messages of your body and the messages of the body of the earth, and you are utilizing your intelligence and your agency as a living system to help inform the steering of your own choices and any choices that you are capable of making that can help steer the collective, which we actually have keep a lot more options than this current system wants us to believe. um, then like we would be on a very different trajectory, collectively, as a species, as a planet, everything. And so that's kind of that's a core guiding principle that's present in all of us. And I'll just share, I think, a precise example. Very recent is Sunday evening. The full moon was technically around 5 p.m. I was making dinner and I started feeling like I was having a panic attack. I was feeling very, very anxious, and it was very overwhelming in my whole system, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. I had, of course, when anxieties are rising, our minds easily create a narrative, and attach to the things that you can be justifiably anxious about. So of course my mind was going there. But Seth came into the kitchen. He could tell something was up with me. I kind of expressed how I was feeling, and he decided to bring us, and the two of us and our son, outside. And I brought my mala to kind of do my grounding mantra practice. And Seth and our son Akiva kicked the ball around, and I just walked around and did the mala practice, looking up at the trees and just really deeply connecting with the trees. And I um it was just this deeply releasing experience. And the mantra that I was doing is it's a Venus mantra that a Vedic astrologer gave me. So I felt like I was connecting with Venus. I was connecting with the full moon. I was connecting with the trees. I was connecting with the birds in the trees. I was connecting with the cold air. It's a very cold moment in Florida, which helped me connect to everyone else experiencing coldness in the world. And all of these layers of connection weren't like necessarily super active in my mind. But I was kind of just like allowing myself to receive them and to allow my body to register that interdependence in a very deep way. And when I was done with my practice, I gave my boys a big hug, and we went back inside and we had dinner and we did bedtime and we went to sleep. And yesterday morning, Monday morning, Seth and I had a couple of quick check-ins even while he was out of the house. Um, and we both got like the same super clear downloads of some adjustments to our pricing structures for the business that
Mm.
were just immediately very obvious to us both. And we began to just take action really, really quickly in implementing those changes. And some of them are going to be need some announcements over time. Some of them were anything that was a price reduction happened immediately. Anything that's going to be a price increase is going to happen with some announcements. But it was just like this really powerful. I'm just reflecting a lot right now about how powerfully that experience shaped like probably the trajectory of our whole business for the whole future moving forward. And how it was relational in nature. It wouldn't have happened if I was solo and just spiraling out myself. I needed my partner to see me and to be present with me and to welcome me into a different state of being, to accompany me into that different state of being. And I needed the entire field of interdependence to hold me in that as well. And it was so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that like that's the kind of place that our choices come from. And it's not to say that it's not informed by actual strategy. Everything that we chose, is coming from a place of real like effective strategy. But it was just like all the things are able to click when you create the spaciousness in your body and in your relationship with the world to allow those insights and those adjustments to take root.
Mm. Beautiful. And how have you learned to cultivate business excellence in this space? Like, what does that capability look like for you? What has worked, but more importantly, what is the process by which you found what works, not just from a like marketing and pricing perspective, but also like delivering the offering? And because that's the part that a lot of people can tend to skip over is like they get the vision, they create the marketing, and then it's like, oh, how do I deliver on it? It becomes a mad scramble, right? And might not be the same for you all as it is like a um composting business or a more like material business. But I'm really curious how you've learned in the process by which you've developed the ability to consistently launch, to communicate different offerings, to do things like, convert people from interested to being a part of the community. How have you kind of developed that process over time?
Yeah. Thank you. The first thing I want to say is
Mhm.
we're still definitely learning. Seth, do you
Yeah.
want to?
Well, I wrote down 3 things that I'll
Yeah.
name, and then Ganga, you could riff on any one of them. But the first thing I wrote down is knowing the worth and value of what we're creating. That's number one. We embody everything we share with anybody. I specifically remember about 5 years ago, we had already been together for about 5 years, and Ganga and I were kind of like, we knew there was a transition coming up in our work, in our lives. And we're like, well, if we wanted to share everything we'd want to share with a person, like what would it be? And that conversation is now what's turned into the entire Amuna ecosystem.
Yeah.
So really just getting clear that like this is all things that we've lived, we've embodied, we know the value and the worth of it. And then the second thing I wrote down is rapid prototype. and I think we talked about that with you recently, Adam, but from Tom Chi at Google, he talks about so often in business, it's like, well, I need everything to be perfect. I need the branding and the design and the price. And then it's like, well, what are you basing that off of? Like your own aesthetic, or is there actual, principles here of why this is going to work? So we love, even with, with so many things, it's like, well, we have an idea. We know this works. We need to figure out the delivery and the distillation of the principle of the framework of the curriculum that we've created. So we'll just try things out like like that. And then the third thing I wrote down is get feedback. Learn from the rapid prototype, use all the feedback we get in order to um, do it again, hopefully better, and just continue on that process. And I feel like over the last 5 years, we've gone through that cycle of rapid prototype feedback to finally get to where we're at now, where it's like, oh yeah, we figured it out. This feels really solid and stable and aligned with our vision, with our values, with our ethics and integrity. And we're going to continue to, receive feedback and improve, evolve and improve. So please, Ganga.
Yeah, on the topic of feedback, it's funny, Carol Sanford, who's a beloved elder and ancestor in the field of regenerative development and regenerative business. She has a book called No More Feedback, and I a little over a year ago, I was working with and collaborating with someone who really liked Carol Sanford. And whenever I would suggest like that we create systems for receiving feedback from the community that this other person was creating and for her business, she would always kind of like shut it down. She'd be like, no, like Carol Sanford says, no more feedback. And I was like, feedback is an essential property of living systems. And I don't want to build something where I am not actually taking very deeply seriously what the experience of my customers is. And what I believe Carol Sanford was really teaching about in that book was shifting the feedback paradigm in corporate settings where it's somebody from the top giving feedback to people working underneath them, instead of building and developing their capability to take responsibility for what they're responsible for. And I'm so glad that I'm not in that collaboration any longer, and that sometime late last year, Seth and I really embraced integrating Google Forms into like everything. So when somebody buys something, they're immediately brought to a Google form where we understand why they purchased, what drew them to us, where they've learned about us, and what they are really seeking, and what is the state that, when people register for the Edge, we ask them, like, when you imagine a more, empowered, connected relationship with sexuality, that is the thing that you signed up for this for, what does that feel like for you? So that, it's supporting us, and it's also supporting them in having a baseline and an understanding of what drew them there, what they are longing for, and what they're going to be working toward, which helps them to buy in more seriously into actually making use of the resources that they purchased. So many people buy online courses and never do them, and we don't want that. We don't want to just take your money and have you drop out. We want this to be really effective. So we also put forms throughout the entire experience of the course. We have just like these check-ins for inquiry that are completely optional, but they help us harvest testimonials for sure, which is amazing. It's so great to see how people are experiencing the benefits of things before the process is even complete. And it also is an opportunity for us to understand if there's anything in the delivery that isn't quite working for them. And my first answer to your question before Seth shared was, I think that the most important thing is knowing your values. Like, we start everything from a place of values, even and begin within the drop in the next new moon drop is our entire values workshop from our course, the V's. That is like a life compass kind of process. And when you know your values, and so many like companies do, like, we state our values, and like then they don't actually have integrity or like mechanisms through which you can actually do a filter of like, is this decision that I'm making actually aligned with my values? Like, it's just kind of like, oh, we figured out our values, we're going to put them on the website. Like, That's not the fucking way.
Yeah.
But if you actually understand your values in a deep way and you incorporate them into the design of your business at every single stage, it's amazing what kind of creativity that can unlock. And for
Yeah.
us, a really core value for us, or maybe not even value, but principle, that's just central to everything that we do is being deeply trauma informed, really coming from a place of understanding the nervous system and understanding that every nervous system has unique patterning and unique associations, but by having a really robust understanding of the nervous system and integrating that understanding into how we design the delivery of our courses, the delivery of our messaging, the delivering of our of like our marketing and sales things, the way that we show up on calls with people. I mean, there is so much, so much of the process of designing this business has been us running things that we're learning. Like neither of us have a sales or marketing background, and that's the most that's like such an important part of running a business and on the internet. It's not easy. We're still very much learning. And we have to run the filter every single thing that we learn of like, is this actually violating people's agency? Is this actually leveraging people's trauma against them? Because the answer a lot of the time with a lot of forms of marketing is yeah, it's literally a strategy to leverage people's marketing, to leverage people's trauma, to put them into a survival state response to make them make a purchase on impulse. And that's really it's something that I really would like to see more people speaking about. So maybe we need to start and embody that and
Yeah.
be speaking about that much more fervently. I've written about it a little bit. Um, but yeah, a lot of Linda, I love your comment. A lot of marketing is trauma porn. Yeah, I'm glad that you called this out.
Yes.
I really agree on so many levels. And so we just try like so we're constantly both of us, and it's very helpful to have both of us because
Yeah.
Seth catches things that I don't catch. If I'm like, oh, I saw this thing and I think it might be a good idea, maybe it's something we can try out, he might be like, no, there's something about that doesn't feel quite right, and then together we will look at it and see like, oh yeah, this is not ethical for us, this does not hold water to our ethical standards. And so we have especially because we teach things that intersect with sexuality, spirituality, somatics, the systems that we live within. All of these are areas of life that are incredibly vulnerable, that carry a lot of trauma for a lot of people. So it'd be very easy to, if we just hired a marketer to just take the wheel and do all the marketing for us, we'd probably make a lot of money. And we're not willing to to do that in a way that is actually unethical. And so yeah, we've probably left a lot of money on the table over the years uh, by taking this approach, undoubtedly. And we're still in the process, very much, of developing what business excellence looks like, rooted in our values. We have real confidence that we'll get there. But it has definitely been a winding and often financially stressful kind of a path to choose to operate from our values the way that we are committed to. But we know we have the vision of seeing what is possible long term with what we're creating at Amuna. And we know that, just like Buckminster Fuller said, he said about humanity that it will be touch and go for quite a while. But at the ultimate factor that determines whether or not we will be successful as a species, this is what Buckminster Fuller said, is integrity, is personal, is integrity at every scale. And so we know that the integrity of our business is much more important than short-term financial gain. And we definitely need the business to be financially stable, for sure. That's a very real reality. But we're just not willing to do it at the expense of our own integrity.
Mm, that's powerful. That's really powerful. Sorry, I'm just I phone in here.
Or
Okay, can you still hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Um, yeah, and that's kind of that's the tension that we're seeing at RegenEarth Studio that we want to support with, because so many people are in a financially precarious place and they want to move with integrity. And there's a real, especially short term, sacrifice, right? That you have to make. And the systems of funding business integrity at at the expense of short-term growth simply don't exist.
They don't exist.
And the thing is that short-term integrity creates potential for long-term growth of the business. And so it on a theoretical and conceptual level, financially, it should make sense. And that's one of the key tensions that we're looking to build into. We're looking to create the conditions where these funds exist to give people these short-term boosts so they can launch something that's in integrity. And there's also the risk that that turns into people staying in the thoughtosphere, right, and not launching
Mm.
any. So it's just that this is why I love what you kind of brought business excellence down to, Seth, is we launch and we learn and then we launch again. And
And yeah.
yeah.
Well, to one up that, the way that we've designed the greater Imuna ecosystem, especially the people going through the year-long Begin Within cohort, is we're actually providing the space for other people to do the same.
Hmm.
We know the frameworks and curriculum are good. We've been sharing it with clients for 5+ years now. What we're so excited about is the emergent property of the people. And as they're using our frameworks to understand themselves better, deeper and wider, we want to be creating the opportunities for them to rapid prototype their own offerings in our space so they could get that immediate feedback in a safe, secure environment where we're all lifting each other up, obviously with feedback that's going to be supportive to their evolution and growth, but in a trauma informed, delicate way, in order for them to refine in real time and then continue to scale into their networks and etc.
Hmm.
Amazing. That really reminds me of what we're doing in the nexus of the project raising sessions, and we're actually bringing the larger community in, but it's basically like these processes of someone getting up and saying, here's what I'm working on, here's the questions I have, and we build it together, and that's such a important piece of this work. Um, as we wrap up here, I'm curious, around your reflections of what was it like kind of talking through Imuna from the perspective of these four pillars of Earthwise entrepreneurship, of business excellence, inner coherence, Earth source leadership, and living systems thinking. How did that shift how you think about Imuna, or how does it? Yeah, what was your experience there?
Yeah, well, the first thing I noticed is that it's like it's energizing, right? It's like it's life giving. I was kind of drowsy earlier this morning, and I feel like I have a lot more access to my energy, and it's clarifying. Like it's clarifying and encouraging for us at the stage that we're at right now. But I also think that at every stage that we've been in the past, it's a way of framing things that's like I feel like in the past, we maybe have been like over indexed in certain areas. And like, I think that this framework can be really helpful to be like, all right, am I taking my business seriously as I'm taking my own inner coherence? Am I really balanced in this whole sphere? So, yeah, it's really, I think, really insightful, really helpful.
And what's coming up for me is just really feeling so deeply how the four pillars truly are the antidote to the hustle and grind mentality.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And to simply embody the pillars, right? You mentioned integrity, passion, values, authenticity. When we're truly embodying the four principles, based on some of our frameworks, some of our formulas, it literally equals more flow,
Hmm.
more follow through, more flow, more congruency, and it truly is the antidote to the hustle grind.
Mm. Amazing. No, it's so great to hear that reflection, because this is one of the things that has come from our experience and our kind of like building and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. And it's the first time I felt that there's an ongoing process to balance all of these things, because a lot of times it's these one-off tools, right? It's the business model canvas, and then there's a little bucket for like eco-social benefits, or it's like this very deep like inner coherence framework, but how does it connect to the actual business? And the reality is there's it's a spiral, and that's why we have it as a DNA strand, because DNA spirals upwards almost infinitely. So it's great to hear that reflection. And I'm just putting in the chat our masterclass that we have tomorrow. um, yeah, it's tomorrow. um, Around the pillars of Earthwise entrepreneurship. If you want to learn more, I would love to see you there. And thank you, Seth and Ganga, for
Thank you.
joining me. If you haven't checked out their work at Imuna, please do so. Feel free to put a link in the chat. And yeah, this was a wonderful conversation, and great to see this framework embodied in your experience. It's very rich to see, and I hope everybody here really was able to start seeing um, the pillars come together and these threads coming together within their own context, and the key activities, right? Of what, hey, we launch, we go get we go get feedback, and then we take that and evolve with it, and at each step of the way we're checking what are our values and principles, are they being embodied here? And it's there's a lot of complexities in it, but that as a foundation is a really beautiful thing that you shared. So thank you for your wisdom and wealth of experience and sharing it here with all of us.
Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you for seeing us and for seeing what we're doing as being so deeply connected to everything that you're creating at RegenEarth Studio. It's really an honor to be weaving together. I feel very passionately about the integrity of the regenerative world and regenerative movements. It's like my deepest passion in all of my work, and I think that one of the most important pieces in that is this kind of weaving, and mutual support as well. So I'm really excited for the masterclass tomorrow, and for all the things that you all are offering. And it's so needed. I think that you guys really see the need for greater connection between key players in a really wide range of regenerative initiatives and regenerative projects, and it's very important that they be supported in this way. So I hope that all of the people who are needing exactly what you guys are offering really hear the call and jump in and participate with you all.
Absolutely. And just a note while it's in my mind, when you're talking about people launching within your community, I was like, oh, we need to talk about how we can weave nexus with what you guys are doing, because that's what it is. It's a nexus point, and would love to have you both benefit from what we're building there. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you all for joining, all 36 of you. And we may be back. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, awesome. Be well, Adam. Have a good day, everybody.
All right. Bye bye.